Well, now you got into this mess by going down a waterfall. Now, how would you suppose we get them out of there?
By going up the waterfall?
That's right. Anything's possible in Disneyland.
Welcome, friends, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Up the Waterfall podcast with your hosts, Zanna and Scott Otis.
Hello, everyone.
And if you haven't joined us before on Up the Waterfall, we take a journey to Disney past, facts and figures with some nostalgia thrown in, and, you know, a present day twist, because we look at it from where we are right now. We're not just stuck in the past all the time.
This one definitely has some nostalgia.
Yes, this one is a deep dive. I think our first deep dive.
We've done deep dives.
Well, not like a 5-part Epcot series. You probably know the title if you're already listening or watching, but we're going to do a very specific history and present day of how the Grand Canyon is represented.
The Grand Canyon?
In Disney.
How weird.
Well, you thought of it, so I hope you know what's going on, because I'm just here for the ride as well.
It was actually inspired by an Insta story of yours.
From mine?
From a few weeks back. Yeah. Do you remember when you were touring the Wilderness Lodge?
I do,
and
yes.
You sent a little Insta story with a little bit of music in it. Do you remember that?
I did, yes. I added that music.
Yeah.
From the Grand Canyon Suite.
That's right.
Which you probably heard if you're watching this. Well, I guess he does it on the... Sorry, it's the technical stuff I don't keep up with, but Christian always adds, for most episodes, a specific music to whatever the topic is, and I'm
hoping that we can
this.
add that without it being, like...
Copyright? No.
Yeah, all of that.
He handles all that stuff.
Good. But yeah.
It'll be fine. I don't think anyone's coming after a 100-year-old thing, or however old that is.
It's not that old.
Okay.
As we'll learn.
Well, let me just, because, I'm not going to be doing much of the talking for this one, but I will jump in. I will jump in. I just want to give my personal background.
Oh, please.
Up until I went to Disneyland, and especially until I met you, my knowledge of the Grand Canyon was pretty much the Brady Bunch episode or episodes. That was a 2-parter that I would watch, the reruns, because I'm not quite that old to see them when they first came out. But
me neither.
After school, that's what I would watch.
Although I thought they were first run when I was watching them.
Yeah, I didn't realize until
turns out they weren't.
Older.
Who knew?
So yeah, it was always, that was always fun and exciting. And I've said many times how California and the West in general just seemed like another country to me, because I never thought I would ever just go out there. I think Bugs Bunny cartoons as well gave me an idea of the Grand Canyon. But it wasn't until I went to California and rode on the Disneyland Railroad, which I'm sure you're going to discuss.
The Disneyland Railroad? Oh my gosh, I should probably do a little bit of research on that.
And they have, the little Grand Canyon area there.
The diorama.
Yeah. Which, as you know from previous episodes, was originated with the 1964-65 New York World's Fair.
Almost.
Oh, no.
The Grand Canyon diorama was not inspired by that. It was the
primeval world
that was connected to it.
I'm fired already.
No, that's okay. They're very intertwined.
We did actually go to the Grand Canyon, the whole family, in 2016,
which is another reference to the Grand Canyon, if you all remember.
That's true. I did.
Vacation movie.
Yeah.
Where Clark W. Griswold checked out the Grand Canyon for maybe about 4 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of felt the same way in person.
Well,
no offense
maybe
to
on the South Rim, but we spent a lot of time on the North Rim.
The North Rim I really enjoyed, which is not
very few
the
people
most
head out
well
that
known.
way. Yeah, most people hit the South Rim, which is the inspiration for the Grand Canyon diorama, as I will explain. But yeah, we went to the North Rim, which is very few people make it out
much
that
less
way.
Crowded. There was a lovely lodge, which was very, had an 80s feel, which I'm sure was more like a 50s feel, because that's probably when they made it. So it was very cool and retro, and it had that great view, which was unique. It wasn't the same as all, I mean, you guys can look up photos. I'll post some photos with the blog. But anyway, most people know just the huge, red caverns from the regular Grand Canyon. And we did go there as well. And I did enjoy the little circular
yeah, we did. That was fun.
Tower situation that we climbed up, the watchtower.
That's right.
But after seeing all of the national parks that we have seen up to that point, which included Yosemite, Arches, Bryce Canyon, Zion, the actual Grand Canyon wasn't as awe-inspiring to me. I don't know. Maybe I was just like, it was the end of the trip. That was like, we did that and then drove to Disneyland.
Yeah, the South Rim was the end of the trip. We had done the North Rim a couple of days earlier. But basically with the Grand Canyon, you get as much out of it as you put into it. And
I suppose. It's not like we hiked to the bottom.
That is true. And that's kind of one of the things about the Grand Canyon is it's very imposing. It is a very large canyon.
Yeah, it's huge and iconic.
200 miles long, a mile deep, 2 mile, or it depends. It's 2 to 10 miles wide. It's a big, big thing. And so it's very imposing, very tough. And you have to be of a certain physical strength in order to be able to hike down. And so a lot of people really can. What are you implying? No, I'm just saying it's not easy. And so most people do only enjoy it from the rim. And so, as much time as you can do that. And we were kind of in a hurry at the end on our way to Disneyland.
We did see a really cool elk.
Oh, that's right.
As we were driving away, though.
But I was just saying,
But I digress, as usual. Anyway, Grand Canyon, Disney, go.
Well, okay. As most of you know, Walt Disney was he was a nostalgic. He very much enjoyed Americana and all of that, and this can be seen in many of his films, such as Bambi, Johnny Tremaine, Johnny Appleseed. Did I say Johnny Tremaine?
You did.
It is Johnny Tremaine. Johnny Tremaine and Johnny Appleseed. A couple of Johnnies. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, The Great Locomotive Chase, a lot of history, Old West, and basically a lot of his movies and the lands in Disneyland were inspired by the certain genres, such as the Western, Frontierland, Adventureland, which included the True Life Adventure series, his fairy tales for Fantasyland and science fiction for Tomorrowland. And so a lot of his movies were based on that. And, of course, then Disneyland was, too. And so he was, as I mentioned, he was doing the True Life Adventure series as well, which, nobody had done that before him. And, things like The Vanishing Prairie, The Living Desert, and, he was winning Academy Awards left and right for that. So, really, it's no wonder that something as awe-inspiring as the Grand Canyon, came to Disney's attention and, was an inspiration for a lot of things. And I guess the original thing that I think that was the Grand Canyon inspired was actually like a 1945 Pluto short called The Legend of Coyote Rock. And even though, and I watched that just today, and even though it wasn't directly inspired by the Grand Canyon, it sure looks like it. And
I've seen that.
It's basically Pluto's kind of like he's guarding sheep in what appears to be like the Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and a coyote by the name of Benttail is basically trying to get at the sheep to eat them and have a snack. And it's the adventures of Pluto and trying to save the sheep from this guy. And in doing so, they actually kind of create havoc in what appears to be the Grand Canyon. And later, actually, all of that footage was used in another short called The Grand Canyon Scope, which was, with the name, it definitely was inspired by the Grand Canyon, which was a Donald Duck short, which was released on December 23rd, 1954, with Donald Duck, and, of course, everyone's favorite ranger, J. Audubon Woodlore.
I didn't know
voiced
that was
by
his
Bill
name.
Thompson.
I probably did know that, but I totally forgot
now, this
it.
is a rare one where J. Audubon Woodlore did not appear with Humphrey. the
Yeah,
bear.
he was just with Donald.
He was just with
Interesting.
Donald. He was basically the park ranger at the Grand Canyon, and and Donald Duck was really kind of a rascally park goer, trying to throw rocks into the canyon and step where he shouldn't and do
And
things that he shouldn't.
Really, based on watching Ken Burns' National Parks documentary,
yes.
that time period was when so many more people were being, lured to explore
Exactly.
national parks and things like that. So it was very timely, like getting out on the open road kind of vacation
That's right.
situations.
And so, and actually this was the second cartoon to be featured in CinemaScope, which was their new kind of fun gadget. I guess it's not really gadget. It was essentially widescreen, which they had done with, they tried that with Lady and the Tramp. And of course, Sleeping Beauty, which came out in 1959, was also in CinemaScope. It's a huge widescreen, beautiful thing. The first one being Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom.
Ah, yes.
The Academy Award-winning short about music. But this was the second one, so, and actually at one point, J. Audubon Woodlore even says to the crowds gathered at his talk, "It's okay, everyone, spread out. This is CinemaScope." Kind of breaking the fourth wall
funny.
there. But, so it's essentially Donald Duck, and they actually have pack mules where they're taking the trail down in pack mules, going down, and he discovers a mountain lion, and once again, Donald Duck and this mountain lion create all kinds of havoc, and they actually kind of destroy the Grand Canyon, at which point J. Audubon Woodlore tells them, "All right, here's a couple of shovels. We need to put this thing back the way it was," and they have to essentially dig out the Grand Canyon.
Wow, that sounds like something that would happen.
Yeah.
Was his name like the letter J or the name?
The letter J.
I wonder what the J stands for.
I don't know.
That's a trivia thing you should find out.
It could be anything. I mean, I just think we all know where Audubon came from.
Right.
So, I don't know.
Interesting.
So anyway, that cartoon came out with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in theaters in 1954. And, but anyway, but of course, as I mentioned earlier, Disneyland, of course, our favorite park, that opened up in 1955. And one of the opening day attractions was, do you know?
The railroad?
Well,
No.
yes, the
What?
Disneyland Railroad was an opening day
Oh,
attraction.
okay.
But not
like
with
the pack mules? Was that?
pack mules.
Yes.
That's right. I was going to say, they didn't introduce the
mine train till later. It was like dirt. That whole side of the park was just dirt, right?
pretty much. Yeah. So the train just kind of went around. It didn't. I mean, it went around some fun things. Of course, the Rivers of America on that side was nearby, but over in between Tomorrowland and Main Street, there wasn't much. There was kind of the backstage areas. But the Mule Pack. Oh, you're talking about that area, not the Tomorrowland. Yeah, we'll get to that later. I got ahead of myself. The Mule Pack. They had a stagecoach as well as the mine train through Nature's Wonderland, which came later. But yeah, they had essentially dirt. That area was really very dry and desolate. But the Mule Pack. I mean, if you think about it, live animals and guests riding them.
It was a different time.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Also, to jump in,
Oh, please.
it was a play, a joke reference to John James Audubon.
Okay.
Like, that's his real first name.
Well,
so
there you go.
There you go. It wasn't like any fun, interesting.
But
name.
I think that's fun and
Yeah, no.
interesting. So.
And he's the park ranger for Brownstone National Park. Isn't that funny?
That's with the Humphrey Bear card.
Yeah.
But in this one,
Yeah.
Grand Canyon. All
Exactly. Sorry. I digress. Yet again. Go ahead.
The way. No, that's good. That's the information I want. Anyway, Mule Pack. So this was an opening day attraction, and actually Walt bought these mules for like $50 a piece, and he got like 25 of them. And guests essentially rode them, even though they were kind of stubborn, and sometimes went, sometimes didn't, because they do what they want to do. The ones in the actual Grand Canyon are actually known as being very, very good with their feet.
I can't imagine. I
Yeah,
mean,
'cause-
even if I was a skinny person, like,
they've
trusting
actually
myself on
never
them.
had an accident where it's misstepped or anything like that.
wow,
So if they've ever had an accident, it would be because of their guests.
human error.
Yes, human error. But yeah, so they had that, and then they changed the name. They did a lot of work in 1956, in the first year, where they added a lot of things, and they changed. That's when they added the Rainbow Ridge, and so they called that the Rainbow Ridge Pack Mules. And then later, the Pack Mules through Nature's Wonderland, which went with the mine train through Nature's Wonderland, and that was amazing because they had the mine train, pack mules, and a stagecoach kind of all going within that vast area out there, with all kinds of things that were inspired by the true life adventure films, like especially The Vanishing Prairie and The Living Desert.
Wow.
So
I wish I'd seen it.
Yeah. Actually, based on its closing date, and it's amazing how long it lasted, the mules were there all the way through 1973.
Wow. And
considering that my first visit to Disneyland was on my 4th birthday, which was 1974, I guess I missed the mules by that much. Oh, well.
Yeah. You probably would have had to wait a little bit longer to ride them.
Yeah.
You were an infant.
That's right. Oh, that's true. I never thought of that. But yeah, so even though none of the areas were really directly inspired by the Grand Canyon, certainly the pack mules kind of were, because that's the only national park that really had pack mules that went places. So it's a natural fit. But anyway, the next two references kind of go hand in hand. Walt Disney, in doing all of the true life adventure films, commissioned one called inspired by the Grand Canyon, and it was called Grand Canyon.
Makes sense.
This was and it was filmed entirely in the Grand Canyon. It has an absolute total of 0 words in narration. It's all set to the music of Ferdi Grofet's suite, Grand Canyon Suite, which was itself written in between 1929 and 1931, which he was inspired by his visits to the Grand Canyon. And it had 5 movements called Sunrise, Painted Desert, the most famous one being On the Trail, and Sunset and Cloudburst. All of which, if you can imagine some inspiring scenes of the Grand Canyon. And this short that they made in 1958 was actually released in December 17th of 1958, with a general release in January of 1959 with the movie Sleeping Beauty. The film itself was also presented in CinemaScope, and but as I mentioned, it was entirely set to the music of the Grand Canyon Suite, and it was and I actually just watched that today, right before we were recording this, and it's just a beautiful documentary, 30 minutes of just beautiful scenes from the Grand Canyon with the sunrise, a thunderstorm, all of the animals and wildlife of the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River, and epic scenes of water sweeping by, and even at some points the gentle movement of the Colorado River, all of which it's amazing to think that whole canyon was carved out by that one river. It does have some wild rapids at some points, but it's also very calm and gentle. But it's just a beautiful film. It actually won the Academy Award for Best Live Action Short.
Whoa.
And it's only 29 minutes long, and I highly recommend it. And it can be found. I don't know if any of you have the old Sleeping Beauty. Who buys DVDs or Blu-rays anymore? But I guess if you do, it's attached to the Sleeping Beauty one.
I wonder if it's on the special, like the bonus things on Disney Plus.
I haven't checked the bonus footage there yet. It itself, all by itself, is not out on there, which is sad. And I think they're doing an ever-going rotation of things, and hopefully they will add that. Fingers crossed. Because I highly recommend it. But yeah, I actually need to check the bone.
I will check it right now while you keep telling your tales.
Thank you. Let me just have a quick sip. But anyway, all of this was being filmed at the same time that they premiered a new thing at Disneyland, which I had mentioned before. And this is actually my favorite inspiration of the Grand Canyon, of course, was the Grand Canyon diorama at the Disneyland Railroad. And, if you think about it, the railroad always just kind of went around and around. And at one point, Walt Disney thought, our railroad needs a finale. And he had Claude Coates actually kind of go to the Grand Canyon and do, take photos, do some storyboards and some concept art. And actually, Claude Coates completely disagreed with it being there because he didn't think that in between Tomorrowland and Main Street that was a good fit. And
it is kind of weird, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. What are you going to do? Walt, of course, said, no, I think our train needs a good finale. Let's put it there. And Walt, of course, won out. But so it represents the South Rim. It's a 305-foot diorama that's 45 feet high. And at the time that it opened, it was the largest diorama in the world. It took over 300 gallons of paint. There were 4,000 hours of labor and all kinds of different colors involved. I don't know how many colors. More than 4.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
You got it.
I was going to say they, semi-recently redid it and added a lot of...
That will be mentioned.
Effects. Okay.
No, that's good. Because that is very cool what they have done. But anyway, the artwork was done by a scenic artist, a Disney scenic artist by the name of Delmer Yoakum. Interesting.
Good old Delmer.
That's right. But anyway, they set this, of course, also to Ferde Groffet's Grand Canyon Suite, the On the Trail movement that I had mentioned before. And then they added the Primeval World sequence in 1966 after the World's Fair. But this was 1958 that it opened up. So in 1950, from 58 through 66, they had only the Grand Canyon diorama. And of course, I think a lot of us who are listening have seen it. It includes rocks and trees and ancient human ruins, indigenous wildlife. It goes from a snow-capped region all the way through a storm, complete with a rainbow, to a climactic sunset. It includes all fun things like porcupines and skunks, rattlesnakes, rabbits, deer, crows, wild turkeys, bighorn sheep, mountain lions, golden eagles, armadillos, and bobcats, all using, of course, our favorite taxidermy. Yeah, if you think about it, Disney was only using audio animatronics, so they were using fake animals that were moving, and in this case, it was real animals that were not moving. Kind of a fun twist on things.
I guess that's what makes it a diorama, because it's just
That's right. And of course, I think a lot of us have seen this kind of thing in museums across the world.
Or on Night at the Museum.
Yeah, I actually grew up going. I grew up going to the Hastings Museum in Hastings, Nebraska, that had a pretty good set of dioramas.
Really? For
a very small Nebraska town. That's where my grandparents lived. But, of course, if you go to the natural history museums of the Smithsonian or New York City or pretty much any major city.
I don't think they have one of those in Boston, because I never...
Really?
We had the Museum of Science and the Museum of Fine Art. I mean, maybe they do now. I don't know.
Is there one here?
No, I don't think so. We're not major enough.
Well, okay.
But I did go to the Kendall Whaling Museum, which was in Sharon, Massachusetts, where I actually grew up. That was pretty boring. But they did have a scary whale in there.
It's amazing to me that the Hastings Museum in Hastings, Nebraska was,
it's in the middle of,
right, but
where those animals were, I guess.
Yeah.
There weren't buffaloes roaming in Boston.
That's a good point.
And they just brought them into New York.
But I mean, Hastings is a really small town.
I guess.
Right in the middle of Adams County. And, maybe 20 miles south of Grand Island, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of 100 miles west of Omaha and Lincoln. So, yeah. It's amazing. And if anyone here is from Hastings or has been to the Hastings Museum, please give me a shout out and, kind of agree with me, please, because I'm amazed. Because
we cannot, exactly. That would be funny.
But they also had trees, lots of trees there, which the tree trunks themselves were actually authentic, but the leaves were not.
Interesting.
But they had ponderosa, juniper, pinyon pine, and aspen. And I guess they had, the leaves were plastic. And I guess when they created them, they did them upside down, and so that when they dried, that they would be hard enough so that over time they wouldn't droop.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Those Disney guys thought of everything.
That's right. So anyway, this whole thing, this expansion opened on March 31st, 1958 with the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad. It was actually sponsored by Santa Fe and Disneyland, or the Atchison, Pacific, and Santa Fe Railroad.
Not the Atchison, Topeka?
Oh, wait.
And
no,
the Santa Fe?
Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. What did I say?
I don't know, but it was wrong.
A bunch of words.
Yes.
I only know it from the song that's in some
Topeka
musical.
and Santa Fe Railroad was actually the sponsor of what was it then called the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad.
Huh. I didn't know that at all. So, learning new facts all the time.
But anyway, so for the opening of this, the executives of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, they were picked up by the omnibus at the Anaheim train station, taken through city streets to Disneyland, where they hopped on the railroad and Main Street, went around to the Tomorrowland station, where they had there actually a 96-year-old chief Navanganwa. I'm sure I butchered that name, who is a member of the Hopi Indian tribe that actually lives in the Grand Canyons. And he
lived.
Was that?
He probably lived there. I don't think he's.
I'm sure he lived.
He was 96 then. I don't think he's still around.
No, I'm saying then he lived there. Because that's where they are from. The Havasupai Indians, and I guess, I'm not sure where the Hopi tribe are, but the Havasupai are from there. Anyway, he performed a ritual blessing there. And then
That's
they all
cool.
hopped
I didn't know
on
that either.
And they all hopped on. Yeah, there's a great photo, which we'll be sure to include in the notes or the video.
You're probably seeing it right now.
That's right. And then afterwards, they all hopped on the Fred G. Gurley, which was the number 3 locomotive in Disneyland set, because, of course, all of their trains were named after executives of that railroad. In fact, Fred G. Gurley was there for this, and he hopped on his own railroad, named after himself. And then they went through.
Very cool.
But anyway, the inclusion of this diorama actually changed the position of it inspired them to change the position of the seats on the train to face essentially inside the park, so that they would have a direct face, of face viewing of the diorama.
Which
I always grew up, seeing those, but they actually had some that were both ways. Mm-hmm. Me growing up, and I think they still do.
They still do, yeah. Because I'm always like, why would anyone want to go on that kind?
Yeah, and like the ones that face where you're facing forward, facing the engine, I always made sure to be on that side, so that when it went through,
you could see.
Yeah, you could see. Who knew? But anyway, as you mentioned, it was recently refreshed. They closed it for 18 months.
A lot of dust, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, are you kidding me? A lot of dust. But it was all refreshed, and they opened it on July 29th, 2017, and including all kinds of fun new scenes, including that dramatic lightning strike.
Yes.
And, I mean...
That was scary the first time I went.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's amazing to me, having just seen the Grand Canyon short, how many scenes are identical.
Wow, interesting.
In the short and in the diorama. And, of course... the diorama, of course, had to have been, if one was inspired by the other, that one was inspired by the short, even though the short was released after it opened.
Interesting.
Yeah, because there's even a scene in the diorama where there's some, I think it's bobcats that are kind of wrestling. Actually, no, it's mountain lions that are kind of wrestling. And I always thought that was rather interesting. But it's in the short. So...
Which is not in the bonus features on Disney Plus, by the way.
Not?
No. But you can see National Geographic's Into the Grand Canyon.
Well, that's great, but that's not the one I'm talking about.
No, but, if you just want to see what it looks like, if you've been living under
Disney
a rock.
Plus, please, get on it.
They also have the Donald Duck Grand Canyon Scope.
That's the one I mentioned.
Yeah.
That's on Disney Plus?
Yeah.
Oh, everyone.
Look, do you want to just play it right now? I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, stop what you're doing and go and watch that now. But please actually finish listening to this podcast and then go check out Donald Duck and Grand Canyon Scope.
Yes. After you sign up for Disney Plus, if you're not already a member.
Oh, that's right. Well, I'm assuming everyone that's listening to us has signed up for Disney Plus.
I guess you're probably right.
If not, just hit us up and we'll just set you up on one of our... Wait, no. Oh, no.
No.
Our password is...
No.
And it's the password we use for everything, so, you know.
No, it's different.
All right.
All right, we're being a little silly now. But one other thing about this railroad thing is they actually later then added the Grand Canyon diorama to the railroad at Disneyland Paris.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's weird to think that they actually have both the Grand Canyon diorama and the Primeval World. There's two of each. One at both, Disneyland has both. Disneyland Paris has the Grand Canyon diorama, and the Primeval World can be found in Tokyo Disneyland's railroad.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very weird.
Yeah,
They split 'em
and
up.
we have none, although we did used to have dinosaurs.
Oh, yeah.
Not Grand Canyon, but we had dinosaurs. So
I always kind of thought they were inspired together because there are scenes in the the Primeval World that were inspired by, the original Fantasia sequence.
Oh, yeah.
Which then were also put into Universe of Energy.
it's another episode.
Yeah. And I think I might have mentioned that on a previous episode. Probably the World's Fair one.
Or Epcot. Who knows?
I don't know. There's been so many.
Listen to them all.
Anyway, so for any of you Walt Disney World diehards, and I think there's a couple, right? There's also a very famous thing that's inspired by Grand Canyon. Can you think of what that is?
I'm going to go ahead and say Disney's Polynesian Resort. Oh, wait, no.
No.
Of course, it's the Grand Canyon Concourse
That's right.
inside Disney's Contemporary Resort.
An opening day original from 1971.
Yes, which I will say, I always growing up was like, why is this Southwest themed? Because it's not.
Yeah, if
That's
you
not
think about it,
contemporary,
yeah,
that's
contemporary,
historical.
Apparently it has its 1 foot in the future, but 1 foot firmly planted in the past as well.
Yeah.
With that theme. And it's almost like the only thing remaining from the original design, because they've redesigned it so many times, especially right around the 1990s, in the early 1990s, when they really got rid of that Southwest theme. But I'll talk a little bit about that the mural. Do you have something else you want to add, or?
I had the wrong
Oh no.
post open, so I think this is
Okay.
This is the right one.
Well, I'll talk about that. So anyway, of course, Walt's favorite artist was Mary Blair, and he had her. He commissioned a nice piece. This was actually her, I think, third mural that they've done. She did a couple at Disneyland, but in Tomorrowland.
Which are sadly no
Oh
longer.
my gosh. The scenes of those being destroyed break my heart. But so I'm really thankful that these ones in the contemporary are still there. But it's essentially 18,000 hand-painted tiles on a 90-foot tall, it's essentially the elevator shaft that's right in the middle of this vast expanse within the Contemporary Hotel that, if you think about it, kind of represents the Grand Canyon. They always knew that it was going to be this vast open space, and so they kind of called it the Grand Canyon Concourse. And so they decided, instead of having it be just very dry, and they had to put something there to theme it. So they chose the Grand Canyon, naturally. And I think that actually works. So from the outside, the whole thing looks very contemporary, but from the inside, it's got a nice, it had a nice Southwest feel. And if you even think about the color scheme in the contemporary back then, with the rustic browns and oranges and yellows, it pretty much went with that.
Yeah, and I think I learned on this wonderful blog post, Passport to Dreams. This passport number 2.
Yes.
Dreams.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite blogs.
Foxy Hooves, who I have always wished that my blog would be hers. So
yeah, her writing
that's what my blog
is
wishes it could be.
Absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend this.
But yeah, this is like the stuff that I wish was in my head, but she does so much research into these things. And this is an older post from 2015, but I mean, she has even older ones that are even more loaded with information.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, the idea for all of the original elements of Walt Disney World was like different types of vacation. So you had, you know, the Polynesian was that. And, and so the contemporary, while being a contemporary style architecture, they chose the national park theme because that was another type of vacation to take as well. So all of the not ballrooms, the convention center rooms were named after national park names and stuff like that.
And I think even some of the lounges and restaurants too. I know there was like a Coconino Cove. Coconino is like the color of a certain kind of rock that they have in the Grand Canyon, as well as other things. But
it's, I mean, and reading over this, you know, I don't know if you want me to just jump in.
Well, yeah, please.
Some things I remember because I definitely did go here in my first few visits. We never stayed at the Contemporary. In fact, I didn't stay there until 2010 on my mom's panel training trip. So that was exciting. And I got the whole room to myself. I had no children with me. So it was a very weird experience for me. But we never... I mean, it wasn't the same kind of, it wasn't a place back then that you went for, like, Chef Mickey's wasn't there. Chef Mickey's was over in the Village Marketplace, which we did go to a lot. But my parents did take me to Broadway at the Top.
Ooh.
I think at least 2 times. And then at one point we had brunch up there. There was a Sunday brunch that they would do. And it was very fancy. Yeah, so I have like great memories of that. I did not see Top of the World Lounge when they had like, I probably wouldn't have been allowed to go because that was like an actual nightclub kind of experience. But who knows back then? I don't know. But also what we actually went to, and I do have memories of, is the Gulf Coast room.
Oh, yes.
Which...
That's on the 2nd floor, is that right?
Yeah, and it was just one of the convention halls, and they were like, "Oh, let's turn this into a restaurant, I guess." And
weird.
so
I wonder if they had kitchens there, if they had kind of cart
I
the
don't
food
know
down
how
from...
the layout was if they had to go
They
running.
definitely have an elevator, so they could use that.
That's true.
Who knows?
But when what I remember about it is it definitely felt like you were in a convention hall. There was no windows at all. It was just like very dark. I remember there being like trees in there, like little, I don't know if they were real or not, but there was just a lot of foliage and
very interesting.
White tablecloths. There was only one other table of diners in there. It was this old couple, and I was there with my parents. And then there was like the strolling violinist, which was weird, but because we were like the only people there, we got a lot of strolling violin action happening, you know?
It's so weird.
And because I was so well behaved, I guess, the old couple, when they left, came over and told my parents what a well behaved child I was, and they should be very proud of me.
Their dinner could have easily been ruined.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like I was 5. I was like, 8 or 9. So I wasn't like running around crazy. But again, as I seem to be saying every episode, I was kind of raised in those kind of fine dining environments because my dad worked in the restaurant business, and he was like a maitre d' of places and 5-star dining establishments. So
still, that's very cool that you have those memories.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, I don't remember what I ate or anything, but this was also when we were doing that Gold Key club thing, which I talked about on the last episode, or maybe 2 episodes ago, on the best and worst, hits and misses. So that was the only reason we were probably there, although we did do all of those fine dining establishments, but it was a fun time. I wish I remembered the trees that everyone
Yeah,
has the
I was going to
photos
say,
of.
there are, I think a lot of people have seen the photos kind of looking down on the
Yeah.
Grand Canyon Concourse from the 70s. And it has these weird looking,
Yeah.
I guess, like plastic, but very weird looking
Yeah.
glass trees that kind of gold in color, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I guess that kind of went along with the Grand Canyon Concourse theme.
But those were taken away relatively soon
really?
after.
Okay.
I don't know what
I don't know.
the timeline was, but these other light fixtures and these, I'll show a picture of that. Those little booth, like whatever benches, I definitely remember those.
Wow.
And then I didn't realize this was like pulled from my mind's eye.
That's the one
Those
that have those
weird trees.
The monorail.
Seeing the little cutout niches around the outer rim
Oh yeah.
with the Mary Blair, these things. I totally forgot that
right.
I had seen those.
Oh my gosh.
And that was
that's
really
right.
cool.
I forgot about this.
But yeah, I will definitely link to this blog post. It's an
Absolutely, 'cause-
amazingly interesting read.
Because without things like that, things those niches or those little holes would have been lost to history.
Right. And as
So
she
thank
says in
goodness
there,
for this.
despite it having the least amount of changes in recent times, it really had so many changes early on, like the first 10 years of its existence. They really switched up the dining parts and the names of things, and they even totally redid the whole area where now Chef Mickey's and Contempo Cafe is.
Oh, yes.
Completely different look to it. So
that'll be interesting. Yeah. So I definitely highly recommend y'all take a look at that. But going back to the mosaic, it did depict, the Grand Canyon, but in a very whimsical, childlike way, as it included American Indian children, as well as flowers and animals, little kind of cartoonish-looking animals, including bears and birds and owls and mountain goats and bighorn sheep.
bunnies.
Yeah, that's right. Bunnies
with
and
little
bears kind of wearing.
headbands.
A lot of them even were wearing like Indian clothes. So, and of course, the very famous five-legged goat as well.
Yes.
Now, Mary actually, she never explained that. The five-legged goat. But she was. It is very possible that this was because she may have discovered the Cheyenne spirit bead tradition, which is where tribeswomen would spend hundreds of hours creating geometric patterned artworks with beads or other things. And as a spiritual act, they would, or as a prayer to the Great Spirit, they would intentionally weave or sew in a wrongly colored bead as an act of humility, recognizing the inherent imperfection of humans. So some people suspect that maybe she discovered that because she was very spiritual herself. And she had taken many trips to Mexico many decades earlier, and she kind of found the inspiration from those trips, as well as southwestern prehistoric rock pictographs, as well as Pueblo murals and sand paintings. So, yeah.
Very cool.
But if you get a chance, I highly recommend y'all go out to the Contemporary and just really take a look at this. And it's literally on all four sides. Even if you're go up to the monorail platform, which is actually the side where the five-legged goat is, to take a look at all of it and really take a good detailed look. 'Cause it's amazing.
And have this blog post open so you can see where things used to be and how different it is now.
Yeah. Because apparently when she first saw it, even though she, was working on it, when she first, Mary Blair that is, when she first walked in and saw it at the opening ceremony of the Contemporary, she was just like, oh, wow. She was completely blown away by it.
Wow. I mean, it is
very impressive.
Grand.
Yes, very, very grand. Anyway, but there is even more. There's another Walt Disney World.
I guess we're coming full circle to what inspired you.
Oh, that's right. The Wilderness Lodge. Now, the Wilderness Lodge is it is inspired by a lot of national parks lodges in the American Northwest, as well as, Yellowstone, Yosemite, but it's really got most of how it looks from the Yellowstone,
Yes.
the Old Faithful Inn.
Which we have been to, and it's really cool.
That's right. But there's actually a fireplace there, of course, is a very huge fireplace that is 82 feet high, and it itself was inspired by the Grand Canyon. There's actually another fireplace in the Bright Angel Lodge at the Grand Canyon that has a much smaller fireplace, but that fireplace it's actually called the geologic fireplace, and it includes the same geologic sequence of the rock found in the strata of the entire Grand Canyon, including rocks. They're actually all from the Grand Canyon, including the 1.7 billion year old dark colored Vishnu schist, which is kind of granite veined rock, as well as other flat lying sedimentary rock that was all found alongside the Bright Angel Trail that goes all the way to the base of the Grand Canyon, and include water-worn Colorado River rocks to the light-colored limestone rocks found at the top of the Grand Canyon, which are only a very mere 270 million years old. So,
did we see that when
we actually did not?
Oh, because I'm like pulling it up, and I'm like, I don't remember
we were on the South
seeing
Rim. We did a very quick.
Wasn't
trip
the Bright Angel Trail?
We went to the El Tovar.
Oh.
Which is another. There's
but
like
that was right
hotels.
at Bright Angel Trail, wasn't it?
Yes.
But there was Bright Angel Lodge is at a different place.
It's right there.
Oh, but we didn't see it.
I thought we saw the El Tovar. We were kind of driving by at that point.
We saw that donkey that you're supposed to rub his nose and he brings you luck.
The donkey you're talking about is on the North Rim.
Yeah, that's where Bright Angel Trail is, isn't it?
No, that's all on the South Rim.
Oh, well then I don't know what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah.
Never mind.
No, that's okay. Yeah, there's like 4 hotels, including several old historic like lodges on the South Rim. The one on the North Rim is also very historic and old. I can't remember the names of them all, but the Bright Angel one is on the South Rim.
Gotcha.
And it was actually designed by Mary Coulter, who did a lot of those that kind of artwork and or a lot of that architecture. Anyway, so the one at the Wilderness Lodge was inspired by that fireplace at the Bright Angel Lodge, but done in a much grander fashion, because our Wilderness Lodge Hotel is a vast, huge, essentially an 80-foot tall lobby, very grand. So they decided to fill that with that fireplace, and there's over 100 colors in that fireplace, including hues of green and magenta, buff, red, black, and brown. And what's interesting is actually if you go to each of the different levels, right next to the fireplace at each of the levels, there's a display that actually shows like little bits of fossils that were actually found in the Grand Canyon at that level of the the strata, because the entire height of the fireplace is actually it's in the same proportions as the entire Grand Canyon. So these displays will tell you like how old these particular things are, like when that rock was created and what kind of things can be found there. It's very interesting. I've taken you there to see that, right?
The Wilderness Lodge?
No, I mean those displays.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically.
Yes, I have seen them.
So yeah, even though the entirety of the Wilderness Lodge is not all, of course, a theme to Grand Canyon, that part is.
Very cool.
And that really kind of wraps it up. I mean, I guess there is that one scene in the Goofy movie where Goofy and Max when they're on the road, they actually make a stop at Grand Canyon. But that's
I've still never seen a Goofy movie. Please direct your complaints to
it's not a complaint.
Disney on Twitter.
Just check it out on Disney Plus.
I will have to do that. Yes.
After we see the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Short, which can be found on the Sleeping Beauty DVD or Blu-ray.
This is special edition. I wonder if
Wow,
it's on
I think
all of
that's
them.
the old. That's the old DVD. I also have the Blu-ray.
Oh, okay.
I forgot to whip that out. Sorry. This is the chronological Donald Walt Disney Treasures tin set that includes the Grand Canyon scope cartoon,
which you can also see on Disney Plus.
That's right. And of course, the complete Pluto Volume 2 is the one that included that original cartoon that I had told you about, the legend of, what was it, Coyote Rock.
Ah, yes.
Which was kind of the original. If you had to see one, I would recommend the Donald short first, the one that's actually on Disney Plus. But yes, and so we'll actually link to all of that. And I just realized I had actually completely forgot about one other thing, and I would like to include that now.
Please do.
You're not going to believe this.
What?
There was a whole movie created around the Grand Canyon, not just that short. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but the Grand Canyon was the last bit of America that was discovered or really mapped out. They at some points they had all of America mapped out except kind of a weird little area that they were just
like we don't know what to do with this.
Yeah. It's like how you often see on the globes where they would put the little monsters at the edges of the earth because they just don't know.
This is where the devil lives.
Exactly. Essentially, the Grand Canyon was that. And it was discovered in 1869 by John Wesley Powell. I guess it was discovered before then, but it was just really, this was the first time it was really mapped out. And so they had an expedition, the John Wesley Powell's expedition, or I guess it's called the 1869 Powell Geographic Expedition. And it included him, as well as 9 other men, in 4 boats with, I think they had like 3 or 4 months worth of food. And they basically started up in the Green River, Utah, and they went down the Green River to where the Green River and the Colorado rivers meet in Moab, Utah, which is right by, it's actually in Canyonlands National Park, and the Arches National Park is right nearby. But anyway, they just went through all of that and all the way down the Colorado through the Grand Canyon. And Disney made a movie about this called 10 Who Dared. And I cannot believe I forgot about that. This was a 1960 film, basically based on that true story of John Wesley Powell and these 9 other men who went down in 4 boats and had all kinds of misadventures. I think they lost several of the boats along the way, and I think even several of the men, or some of them, I think, even abandoned the expedition. It, however, is not on Disney Plus. I checked. That's sad. I think hopefully with the rotation that they do, that they will include this one.
Maybe now that they're hearing this, word's going to get out.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But I know, I cannot believe I forgot that.
Yeah.
10 Who Dared. If you have, I actually don't even have that on DVD. I got a lot of the old Disney DVDs, and that one I don't have.
Something missing from your collection.
It stars Brian Keith.
Ah, yes.
But not as John Wesley Powell. He's one of the other
unnamed folks.
Well, he has a name. I just can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure.
So anyway, that wraps it up.
Yeah, so we hope you enjoyed this different meandering path through Disney connections to national parks and specifically the Grand Canyon. I don't know if I said this on our first episode or when I said that we were doing this podcast, but part of why we did the name Up the Waterfall was, of course, the opening that you see and hear with Walt Disney and Julie Ream going up the waterfall, but also because of our connection to national parks and waterfalls to be found there.
Yes, I'm a huge fan, especially of the national parks of the Great American West.
Yes.
And there are many, many water features, which, of course, when you have water and big rocks, that makes waterfalls.
Yeah. So we thought this was a good crossover episode, if you will. I don't think we're ever going to do like non-Disney episodes, but this is part of, the inspiration for us to do this show.
Because there are actually many examples of, where Walt Disney
Yeah.
and national parks meet. So
Exactly.
we
Maybe
could
we'll
do
write a book
many,
someday.
many. Yeah, we could do many podcasts or even write a book.
Yeah. And that's
About
why
that kind of thing.
I got you that little sign for Christmas or something. I don't remember when I got it, but you
I
can
loved
find
it.
those on Etsy, and I'll link to that if you are a national park fan
Or you
yourself.
can find them in any national park and just.
No, don't do that. That's
Oh, wait,
against the
no.
law.
That's right. That would be a felony.
Take only
But-
photos and leave only footprints
That's right.
or whatever.
No, that's exactly right.
Take only
raccoons
memories.
and leave only
Do not take the raccoons. Anyway, we thank you, of course, for listening. Please like the podcast, subscribe, so we know that there's more people out there interested. Spread the
Yeah.
word. You can watch this on YouTube if you are not already. And I will have all these links on the blog post that goes along with this. And you can comment there or on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you feel like commenting. So we
you.
thank you for listening and joining us.
Up the waterfall? That's right.
Anything's possible in the Grand Canyon.